Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. We're just going to wait 30 seconds before we start, as a few people are joining the room. All right. Well, we shall begin and see how many more people will come to join us. But I want to say thanks very much for everyone here with us today. Welcome to the webinar Value Chain Collaboration in Public Procurement of ICT and Phones. Just a quick note, this webinar will be recorded and you can use the Q&A function or the chat to pose any questions throughout the webinar. Before we begin, I'm going to just set the scene with a little story which might be familiar to some of you to introduce the Circular Shift project. So years ago, if you were working for a public authority and you wanted to try out circular procurement, it was very difficult to know where to begin. There was not a lot of resources online, not a lot of tools to guide you how. And furthermore, conceptually, it was sometimes difficult to get the buy-in from your manager or your politician on that level. But today, the circular economy is much more well-known in Europe, although maybe not enough yet. And it's easier for us to try out circular procurement. There's a lot of resources, books, online courses, and even several European projects like our own developing the concept in many countries. However, we've identified one need. Although there's many circular procurement pilots, it's proven difficult to scale up these practices across organizations. There's at least 3 reasons why scale-up proves difficult. Either the market is not ready, there is a lack of internal commitment, or it is too hard to say what the impact of procurement will be. These 3 challenges are why Circular Shift was created. It's an EU-funded project designed to accelerate the scale-up of procurement pilots in Northwest Europe. We do this by developing a procurement approach based on value chain collaboration to increase market readiness. We devise trainings to increase internal commitment and generate behavioral change in organizations. And we're creating a framework to measure and predict impact for informed decision-making. We're doing this with an experienced European partnership, a diverse consortium of 10 partners across 5 countries in the Northwest Europe region, co-financed by EU regional development funds. Next slide, please. And our partnership involves 5 public authorities. Rijkswaterstaat, which is part of the Dutch Federal Ministry of Infrastructure, Water Management. They're responsible for implementing circular economy policies internationally and in the Netherlands, and working together with the cities of Almere and Middelburg in the Netherlands, the beautiful Belgian city of Mechelen, and the free Hanseatic city of Bremen in Germany. We're also 2 networks, ACR Plus, an international network of public authorities working on circular economy, and Reseco, a French network promoting sustainability in public procurement. We also have 2 knowledge institutions, Nyenrode Business University outside Utrecht, and Irish Manufacturing Research, which is a non-profit turning big ideas into real-world impact. Last but not least, we have Circulife, which is a Belgian startup helping mid-market companies to maximize financial return on IT hardware. Before we begin, I'm going to show the agenda for today's webinar, which is first going to explore the foundational concepts of circular procurement and value chain collaboration. You're going to hear why Circular Shift focuses on ICT, phones, and also workwear. We will receive a preview of some of the results from our project reports, but more about that at the end. And then we're going to travel across the North Atlantic to Ireland, where we have our first case study. It concerns framework contract for remanufactured laptops. And we have 3 brilliant speakers with us today to tell you all about it. Then our next step follows us to Flanders, where we'll discover how end-of-life strategies for laptops can be combined with social impact. And in both of these cases, you're going to uniquely hear the perspective of both buyers and suppliers. This will emphasize the importance and lessons learned from value chain collaboration. Finally, at the end, we do have the opportunity for some questions and answers, but feel free to post them throughout. I'm delighted to see at least 34 people with us today from countries in Northwest Europe and beyond. I invite you to leave all your comments and questions in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them. And as I said, this webinar is being recorded, so you can look back later. Before we go any further, though, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Marieke Verdestein from Rijkswaterstaat. And Marieke, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dominic, and well, exactly on time. Compliments to that. It's really a pleasure to be here today and to share a little bit about the background and the concepts of circular procurement and why we aim at value chain collaboration in the Circular Shift project. I'm going to share this time slot together with Anita Lombardo from ACR Plus, since we jointly contributed to the needs assessment report that was one of the first deliverables of our project. But first, what is circular procurement? A bit of a boring slide with some definitions, but I guess it's important to kind of start from the same starting point here. So circular procurement considers the whole life cycle of goods and services in order to avoid negative environmental impacts and waste creation, and achieve overall reduction in the amount of energy and materials consumed. So really it's all about value retention throughout the life cycle of products. And including circular principles in procurement really helps procurers to take a more holistic approach to sustainability and accelerate the transition to supply chains, of supply chains to a more circular economy. And to make circular procurement more practical and pragmatic, in one of the projects that I'm also involved in, the Circular and Fair ICT Pact, we developed what we call the procurement cycle. And essentially, circular procurement is about doing four things. It's about buying less products, about buying better products, using them better, and using products longer. And if we do that, we're really able to reduce the environmental impacts as well as the social impacts of the products that we buy. Um, Circular Shift really builds on experiences of other projects and programs, and um, really aims to take the results of these earlier projects to the next step. And one of the programs that was done prior to Circular Shift is the Interreg NSR project ProCirc. And one of the main conclusion of that 4-year program was that in order to achieve circular procurement, we need to consider circularity in the different stages of the value chain of a product. But it also means that when we want to do that, that market engagement could and should really go beyond collaboration with suppliers, which is common in procurement, but engage all actors that have a role to play in the value chain. This is something that wasn't feasible to further elaborate in the ProCirc program, and this is exactly why Circular Shift was developed, to see if we could scale up circular procurement like Dominic already introduced, through the introduction of the concept of value chain collaboration. As Dominic also already shared, so I can move very quickly here, the work in Circular Shift focuses on three different segments or work packages: value chain collaboration and piloting methods for value chain collaboration, working on internal commitment and behavioral change, and impact measurement and forecasting for informed decision making. All right, so why value chain collaboration? Here you see a schematic graph of a circular ICT value chain. And for those who are familiar with the value chain, you know that there are many different players involved in the different steps in the value chain. So if we as public organizations want to create circularity through our procurement processes, it's really important to think about how the decisions taken by supply chain partners in all of these different steps um, can really be better aligned, and how, as public organizations, we can play a better role in connecting the dots. For us, value chain collaboration means stronger internal alignment, because we realize that a public organization, while it is one organization, if we want to create circularity, we need to involve many different players within our organizations. So it's about, in the case of ICT, the internal client, the IT department often, but it's also about connecting the people who deal with end of use products. So they're often linked to waste or managing waste contracts. And it's also about thinking how we can retain the value of the products we buy. So if, for instance, we buy products that and we mandate that those are easy to repair, we mandate that spare parts are available to make sure we can actually repair the products, but we forget about introducing repair services in our contract, we might actually not be able to leverage the possibilities that the procurement has actually given us. So the public organization can really take a supply chain director role, connecting the different dots in order to make sure that we achieve better circular outcomes throughout the life cycle of products. Oh, and I think I skipped a slide. Yeah, so circular shift, as Dominic also mentioned, focuses on two product categories, workwear and ICT. So today we're focusing on ICT. And if you're also interested in the topic of workwear, then reach out to us to also receive the invite for the webinar on workwear, which takes place on May 13th. So why did we choose workwear and ICT? I guess there are various reasons why we did this. First of all, these are common products that are procured by particularly by by almost all procuring organizations. So they're common, and people can really learn and replicate the learnings of the project. But we also see that textiles and ICT are products where consumption increases. And the life cycle impacts throughout the life cycle are quite intense and strong. So there is also a lot to gain if we work on circular procurement. Thinking about climate impacts of the products we buy, thinking about critical raw materials that are used in ICT, the raw material production in case of both textiles and ICT, and the growing amounts of waste in both sectors. Yeah, so with that, I'd like to give the floor to Anita to share a bit on the needs assessment work that we did.
Thank you very much, Marike. So yeah, I would like then, now that you have clearly set the concepts of value chain collaboration and circular procurement, to move into a short overview of our needs assessment report. Value chain collaboration might sound easy at first glance, but in fact it's not. And public procurement organizations don't have yet, it's not very common yet, this approach, and are not used to playing the role of VCC, broker, or directors. So that's what we want to investigate through through circular shift, and that's why we decided to carry out desk research and to draft a needs assessment report that would identify the needs and challenges linked to foster further value chain collaboration for procurement. Yes. Thank you for moving the slide. So in this needs assessment report, we carried out literature review, and also we investigated existing good practices out there in the Northwest region. We conducted several interviews and shortlisted some good practices that you see displayed here. So I highlighted the first three as these are linked to ICT, which is the focus of today's webinar. And I'll just briefly go over them, but you'll be hearing a lot more after this presentation about each of them, or two of them out of three. So we got the framework contract for remanufactured laptops that was carried out by the Office Government Procurement, I think, in Ireland. And then we got the circular smartphones and so circular smartphones, Fairphone set as standard Android devices by the Office of Flanders. So Department, I think, of Management, or I forgot this acronym, but of Flanders Governmental Department. And then the City of Mechelen and the donation of laptops to extend their lifetime. And then you also see listed some of the good practices linked to circular procurement of textiles that we also delved into in the needs assessment report. And we will go over some of these during the textile webinar coming up in May that was already mentioned. And then you find the link also in the chat to register. Next slide, please. So in this report, we identified several barriers to further value chain collaboration in procurement. I'll just briefly go over a few of them here today, but you will be able to read through all of them once the report is out. So first of all, there's a limited knowledge within the procurement departments of supply chain structures linked to ICT, so laptops and phones, and who are the actors involved in the supply chain, upstream and downstream, especially when it comes to foster reuse and recycle of these items once they've been used. Circular value chains are also quite complex. They don't rely upon a single loop or solution, but require simultaneous interventions across multiple life cycle stages by all actors in the value chain that intervene at different times. So if buyers want to stimulate circularity through procurement and act as transition brokers, they need to set up and manage different forms of collaboration. It's both external with suppliers, repairers, but also internal across departments and functions. And these are often not yet established. So it requires, let's say, first setting up this collaboration at first. So starting in a way from scratch, which makes it a bit more complex and time consuming that keep on going with the linear model, linear chains that are still widespread. There's also insufficient internal alignment and collaboration within the public organization. So the internal client that formulates the specific demand for items may be different so that the organization procuring or asking for a specific item may be different from the one that handles the request, and then the one that takes care of the end of life of that specific asset. For instance, in the case of laptops, the internal client is the IT department, but then the end of use management may be the responsibility of another department that deals specifically with asset disposal. So connecting contracts with upstream and downstream value chain partners is not always evident. Procurement structures and market concentration was also identified as an important barrier. Often the use of purchasing centers, so purchasing centers are often the solution for buying laptops and smartphones for administrations, and there's a preference for large single suppliers that offer a one-stop shop solution. So this reduces the opportunities for engaging other actors specialized in circular economy, reuse, and repair, including social economy. And lastly, maybe to mention also the lack of trust, transparency, and reciprocity. These are factors. This is a factor that constrains further collaboration, not only between all the actors involved, both between the buyer and the supplier, but also among suppliers, different suppliers that might be involved in a specific procurement. So this is, and there's an absence of a transparent systems for supply chain monitoring. So next slide, please. Just briefly about the needs. Some of the needs we have identified in the report is the need to foster a circular mindset across the whole procurement organization. So not only the procurement department, but also the different departments that might send out the demand for a specific item, and in general also the management level to make sure there is a widespread support and a case for circular economy and circular procurement. And this involves obviously a change in the linear way of thinking, such as ordering new items because there's still credits left before the end of the year, or also just in general, really assessing before buying something new whether it is actually needed or there is other ways. There's also necessity to build knowledge and capacity on supply chain collaboration and circular economy within the procurement department itself, as they're the main, one of the key actor involved in this process. Also a necessity to embed further social and societal value in procurement, including some links to the social economy. This can also be a motivating driver for circular procurement initiatives and strengthen engagement and shared purpose among buyers and market actors. And lastly, also a need to improve the inventory and asset management systems to really have a good visibility over the assets in use, their condition, the life cycle performance, and have reliable information before designing the tender that support greater repair, reuse, and remanufacturing. And in conclusion, what we stated in the report also is to advance circular procurement of ICT and work where public buyers need to overcome several institutional, cultural, and market-related barriers to value chain collaboration, and also need to invest further in capabilities, trust-based market engagement, life cycle-oriented budgeting, and organizational structures that better support collaboration as a core procurement function rather than an add-on. And then circular shift, briefly, what we will be delivering later on in the project, a value chain collaboration methodology, some training modules for buyers, and a decision-making framework. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marika and Anita, for kicking us off. I'd like to move us now over to the first case study within this webinar. It's called Developing a Large-Scale Contract for Remanufactured Laptops, the case of Ireland. And with us to present are Erica Hegarty. She's the category manager for ICT at the Central Office of Government Procurement in Ireland. She'll be joined by Anthony O'Dea and Steve Haskew, who represent GreenIT and Circular Computing respectively. They're two value chain partners that help to realize the case. They're going to introduce themselves, but thank you for being with us. And I invite Erica to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you see my screen there, my slides? Perfect. Good morning, everyone. As I said, my name is Erica Hegarty and I'm a category manager here in the Office of Government Procurement in Ireland. And I'm delighted to be invited along today to share our experience of developing and delivering a national framework for remanufactured enterprise-grade laptop computers. So today I'm just briefly going to cover why we took this approach, how we brought it to the market, and what it demonstrates about the role procurement can play in advancing sustainability. And that's without compromising on the quality, the security, or value for money. So as a central purchasing body, the OGP establishes national procurement frameworks that deliver value for money, reduce risk, and support sustainability objectives across the public sector. And in Ireland, sustainable procurement isn't really optional anymore. So policies such as our Circular 17 2025, our Climate Action Plan, and the EU Green Procurement requirements give us both the mandate and the momentum to embed sustainability into how we plan, how we tender, and how we award our contracts. It is within this context that we turned our attention to our ICT procurement. So traditionally, when devices reach their end of life, they're replaced with new ones. And it's a familiar and efficient model. But as we began developing a new end user devices framework, we deliberately took a step back and we looked more closely at the environmental impact. So life cycle cost assessments consistently show that most of a laptop's carbon emissions occur before it's even switched on. And it happens during raw material extraction, manufacturing, and global supply chains. And this prompted us to ask a simple but very important question. Do public bodies always need to buy new laptops to meet their requirements? And through research and market engagement, we found that in many cases the answer was no. And that insight changed how we approached the design to our framework. Now, as you've all said, it's not an easy task, and we didn't automatically assume that remanufactured would work for the public sector, but instead we tested whether the remanufactured market could genuinely meet the requirements around the definition of what remanufactured was in our understanding of it, the quality, the security, the warranty available, and the ability to deliver at a national scale. And we also recognise that Second Life ICT represented a significant departure from what the traditional way was doing it. When we tested the appetite of our clients, only around 25% initially responded positively. And that told us two key things. First, that the benefits of establishing this would need to be real, they had to be measurable, and they had to be clearly evidenced. And the second was confidence and assurance in the devices would matter just as much as the cost would. So instead of actually seeing any of those as barriers, we used our findings from the research as design inputs. So environmental criteria was embedded in the tender. So we asked for recognised remanufacturing and ISO standards. We asked about security. We asked about performance, warranty, and the technical support requirements that would be available to public sector bodies, and to ensure that all of that were aligned to new devices. So the level of service wouldn't be any different, or the end user experience wouldn't be any different buying remanufactured as it would be buying new devices. And to be honest, it really wasn't an instant success. We had to go out to the market 3 separate occasions. Each one gave us new information, and it helped us refine the approach each time, and define what we believed remanufacturing was, as opposed to what the blurb was out there in the market. And that persistence really paid off, because it was crucial in helping us deliver credibility and confidence when we actually did launch the framework. So I suppose the first step for us was it was critical that we were very clear on what we meant by remanufactured. The term remanufactured, it couldn't be ambiguous, and it couldn't be confused with refurbished. So using the BSI definition, remanufacturing actually means returning a product to at least its original performance with a warranty equivalent to or better than that of a newly remanufactured product or a newly manufactured product. And this means that devices are fully disassembled, they're clean, they're rebuilt, tested and restored through a multi-stage industrial process, delivering a like new performance. And that occurs without the environmental impact of manufacturing a new device. And by comparison, refurbished devices undergo a much lighter process with variable quality and limited warranty. And they can't reliably meet the requirements of the public sector here in Ireland, and they do not provide them at scale. And for those reasons, the refurbished devices were intentionally excluded from this framework, and we focus solely on remanufactured. But I suppose the definition of a remanufactured devices wasn't enough. For our clients, confidence depends on giving robust assurances, particularly around security, quality, and the reliable delivery at scale. And that's why the framework's deliberately designed to meet enterprise grade standards. So these devices require independent assurance through BSI Countmark certification. They have to have adherence to recognised ISO standards. They have to have robust security controls, including certified data erasure and TPM-enabled devices. And crucially, devices are supplied with enterprise built quality. They come with full warranty of up to 5 years, and they come with technical support. And most importantly, they are available at scale. So it can be rolled out on a national level for us. And these are areas specifically where refurbished ICT has struggled historically. Here is that the refurbished devices did not give that level of assurance. So this framework was successful because it brings all of these elements together. So it gives us the like new device quality, the independent assurance, the predictable supply, and it makes them suitable for around 80% of public sector use cases. So to say all of that, in 2024, we launched our remanufactured devices framework, which was to enable us to buy up to 60,000 laptops over the term of the contract. The contract agreement is a 4-year contract. So the framework agreement was awarded to a single supplier, GreenIT, who is an Irish SME, and they tendered as part of a consortium with Circular Computing, which is a UK-based specialist in the remanufacturing of enterprise-grade laptops. And we have both Anthony from GreenIT and Steve on the call with us today. And the award of that contract followed a very rigorous open competition, which required a huge amount of due diligence. But it gave us the assurity that it confirmed that this proposal was fully compliant with all of the selection, technical, sustainability, security, governance and capacity requirements that were set out in our tender. And the devices supplied meet enterprise security standards and deliver, which is essentially the same end user experience as a new device. And interestingly, I suppose interestingly for us, the failure rate of the remanufactured devices is only around 3%, which is lower than what we typically see with new devices in early life. So, and they're enterprise grade level laptops. So they're from tier 1 OEMs, which are the likes of Dell, HP and Lenovo, which are the same manufacturers the public sector already relies on for new devices. So it's not stepping away from something that's not familiar to our clients. And as you can see there, the figures on the screen show the impact of a single device, the environmental impact of a single device. But the cumulative figures, environmental benefits over the life of the framework are actually quite substantial. So over the lifetime of the framework, 19 million kilograms of CO2 would be avoided. And just to put that into a bit of context, that's actually the equivalent to 13,000 Dublin to New York flights. Over the term, there'll also be 72 million kilograms of resources preserved, and that's comparable to 10 Eiffel Towers. And the other one is then 11 billion litres of water is saved. And I'm not sure about you, it feels like I do this in a year, but that's around 730 million loads of laundry. So it is quite significant, and it's hard when you see it they're hard figures when you see them and put them into that context. The other benefit of the remanufacturing is it also directly addresses the growing challenge of electronic waste by extending the life of the devices that are already in circulation. And crucially, I suppose, these benefits, they're not achieved at a premium cost. So remanufactured laptops cost on average around 40% less than new devices. And any ICT people on the call will know that gap will continue to widen as there's due to the volatility in the market with component shortages and what's going on in the Middle East. So that gap will grow. So this is a first national framework of its kind in Ireland, and as far as we know globally. And through it, the OGP has enabled a credible enterprise-grade circular procurement solution, and we feel it delivers confidence, assurance, and value at scale. And I suppose while adoption is growing, the perception still really needs to catch up with reality. Remanufactured is often conflated with refurbishment. So between ourselves, the OGP, GreenIT and circular computing, we're continuing to engage and educate our public sector bodies to improve uptake. It has been a slow starter, but it is gradually growing legs, and we hope that it continues to grow over the next 2 years that it has to run. So just to close, I'm just going to show a short video on the next slide, and this just kind of demonstrates why frameworks such as this one are extremely important in practice.
We have seen a great, wondrous advancement in computers over recent decades. They got faster, they got smaller, they got lighter, until we reached a point where they were only getting a little bit faster and only a little bit smaller. But by this point, we had become master consumers. Through habit, we wanted new, and we got really, really good at throwing things away. We got so good at throwing computers away that we break new records year after year. In the EU alone, 160,000 laptops are thrown away every day. About 70% of them could be recycled. Less than 20% are. On average, it takes 190,000 litres of water to make just one new laptop. It produces 316 kilograms of carbon dioxide, and 1,200 kilograms of the Earth's precious resources are mined. 10 years ago, we saw the technology plateau take effect. We started thinking, what if we could remanufacture a laptop to be like new? In 2017, we built a state-of-the-art, dedicated remanufacturing facility, and over the years, we have defined and refined the processes to get us where we are today. So where are we today? We remanufacture laptops that look and act like new. We have an RMA of less than 3%. We can create thousands of the same model to the same consistent quality with no discernible difference. And to confirm our standards of quality, in 2021, British Standards Institute awarded a kite mark of quality assurance for our circular remanufacturing process. The kite mark confirms our laptop's product stock is equal to or better than the original. Not using new avoids a huge carbon footprint.
So I just want to thank you for your time this morning, and I'll answer any questions anyone has, but I'll give Anthony and Steve a chance to chime in case there's any points that I missed from their perspective.
If I could just say, Erica, thank you so much for a very good presentation. I really enjoyed it. I have nothing to add from my side other than if you reflect on Marika's slide of why value chain collaboration is important and look at all of the actors within that slide, the OGP have effectively taken their ambition and pulled together those actors and have delivered it in a way that can be then beneficial to its audience, that being the public sector in Ireland, of which we are a participant with GreenIT. But without GreenIT and without OGP, we wouldn't be able to operate in the way that we are collaboratively. So we see adoption of circular IT and sustainable IT as one of pure collaboration. You can't go at it independently. And we rely upon the OGP and GreenIT to translate the themes of sustainability in the category of technology, because the two languages are very different. But ultimately, the use case is a fantastic one. So thank you so much for presenting us so well, Anthony.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, both. Just to follow up, I suppose, on some of the points that Erica made there, it's key that there's government policy support to a framework like this as well, which is present in Ireland. So putting the framework together is a difficult job in itself, but ensuring that there's policy to back that up is key. Just from the point of view of where, I suppose, the guys on the ground working with the public sector, and while a framework like this is great to have in place, at the end of the day, we have to go out and make it happen and engage with people. And I suppose our experience is it's pretty much the same with all the potential customers that we have for this in the public sector. This is new, it's something different for them. So we have to present it to them that we're seeking to replace new with as new. And what's key to that is not only the products that we supply, but the service that's supplied with it. Not only have the devices to look and act as new, but the backup service that they receive with that is key, because if you're looking for them to move away from new, they have to get the same warranty, they have to get the same services as they would get with new, or they would be reluctant to move. I suppose the other thing as well is it's key to engage with all the stakeholders in the public service. This isn't just a procurement function, it's also an IT function, it's a security function, it's a sustainability function in each organisation. And that can be difficult at times, trying to engage with all of those people, but it's important that you do, because they all have a part to play in it. Previous experience is important as well, and I suppose because we started this in Ireland, that the previous experience that circular computing had at scale was vital to what we tried to do when we tried to implement this in Ireland, because a lot of public sector organisations need to know, has this worked elsewhere before? Where has it worked? Where has it worked at scale? And circular computing were able to bring that to the table with the vast experience that they have. Nobody really wants to know about a remanufactured laptop that's been in the field for the last 6 months. They want to know about the ones that have been in the field for the last 3 years. And how they're going. So that was key to what we're trying to do. And yeah, I suppose that's really it. Like, this is a departure from the norm, as Erica said, for a lot of the public sector. So it's to give them the reassurance. We need champions in each of these organizations to move the needle on a sustainability point of view. So we have to give them the reassurance that this is the way that they go. They're putting their head on the block in a lot of cases. So we need to give them the assurance that they're going the right direction. And yeah, it's been going that way well so far in Ireland.
And just to say, just give a little bit of confidence, I'm actually working on a remanufactured notebook. So I buy what I sell, and I've had this 2 years, and like that, not from a commercial or policy point of view, but from an end user perspective, it was like new when I took it out of the box, and it has functioned and upgraded and re-imaged with Windows 11 when Windows 10 was replaced. So from a function point of view, and for your average office worker, this is what we found: 80% of users can use remanufactured. There's a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll just have a look at them. Sorry, I wasn't able to have a look when I was presenting, yes. So apologies.
I would say we're doing very well for time here, but we have a few questions already come in. I would say maybe we can pose you one now, and then we'll move to the second presentation, see how that informs the discussion. But just a quick question from Julie about the tendering process. How many suppliers were able to react? And was there a lot of competition?
It ended up a single supplier framework. And I suppose this is where we came in with a definition of remanufactured. Everybody had a different understanding of what remanufactured was. From an OEM point of view, so from your original OEMs like Dell and Lenovo and HP, proposals that were put forward to us from them while they called devices remanufactured, what they meant was certain components were remanufactured, or second-hand components had been used to remanufacture new devices. But it still meant that the carbon footprint was significantly higher than what our understanding of remanufactured was. Which is kind of a couple of reasons why we had to go out 3 times. So the first time we understood what we believed what remanufactured was. And I suppose there was different elements to it. Some people had a light touch to remanufactured, but they didn't have the BSI kite mark to give us that independent third-party independence assurances and audited results from ISO and things like that. So ultimately, it ended up as a single supplier framework. We could have had a multi-supplier framework, but when we came down to it, it was only the consortium between GreenIT and Circular Computing that had all of the elements that we needed to be able to give that certainty to our clients.
Yeah. Thanks very much. In the interest of time, I'm going to pause the other questions until later, but want to say thanks for the immediate information that 3 of you provided. We had some really interesting quotations there. We saw Anthony talking about the importance of pairing the service to the product and making the business model a circular one where the product is the service. We saw Steve saying that sustainability needs collaboration across the value chain, which I think is really important about the message of our report and our project. And Erica, thanks so much for all the benefits that you outlined there. Some really interesting things there about the cost, the security, how the costs are going to be impacted by current supply chain shortages due to conflicts around the world. So some really interesting stuff there. What we're going to do is we'll see how the next case takes us further in discussion, and then we have about 30 minutes for questions. But I'd like to introduce our next speakers. They're going to be talking about the case End-of-Life Strategies for Laptops with a Social Impact from Mechelen in Belgium. We've got Julie Pop from the city itself. They are a partner of Circular Shift. And she is going to be joined by Didier Appels, who is wearing 2 hats representing Close the Gap and Circular IT. They'll tell you about themselves. And I think, Julie, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thanks. I think coming after this story from Ireland, we are a very small scale, medium-sized city in Flanders, and we don't have the same volumes and capacity. But I will tell you from a perspective of a municipality in Flanders in Belgium, what our room for maneuver is and where we try to push forward on the level of circular and social procurement. In fact, I'm a sustainability expert, circularity expert, working in the climate department, but working very closely together with my colleagues from the IT department. Peter is here in this call too. And I learned from the IT department already very soon when starting this collaboration, internal collaboration, that they have a nice policy internally regarding the laptops that we are using our laptops for 5 years. So there's already a cost-benefit analysis has been done in order to establish the longest period of time that we could use laptops in the organization without having too much burden in repairs or the cost that is necessary in order to give the necessary support to the staff after 5 years is becoming too high. So that's why there's this internal policy that this staff is using laptops for 5 years, and after 5 years they're called back and renewed. So the legal depreciation period of ICT equipment, and you see this in a lot of organizations and companies in Belgium, they are only used for 3 years. Secondly, after these 5 years, what the ICT department has been doing for already more than 10 years is that they are donating these laptops to different organizations in order to have a social impact, to donate them to people that have live in vulnerable situations. This happens through different organizations in the past. It was with local organizations, social economy, DigiBank Atelier, but also to close the gap, and Didier will tell you all about this later on. So you see that actually our circular ambitions on reducing impact, extending the lifetime, and reusing laptops is really driven by social ambitions. If you look into our value chain, actually, we as a City of Mechelen, we only buy, we don't buy, or we don't write a tender ourselves. We work through these framework agreements because the volume, as I said earlier, is way lower than what OGP talked about. We only buy like 250 laptops per year. And for this volume, it doesn't make sense to negotiate ourselves. So we tap on framework agreements, as many municipalities in Flanders do, actually most of us, are on the same framework agreements. One of these framework agreement negotiators is, for instance, the City of Bruges, together with the Flemish government, Faciliteit Bedrijf. They have negotiated this larger contract, and we take from this agreement. And we are working actually, a lot of the municipalities in Flanders are working with one single point of contact. So in this case, a reseller like Dustin is our one single point of contact that provides us with all of these IT equipment, but also with software solutions and so on. And the original equipment manufacturer, since last years, we only use Dell Latitudes in our organization. So that is like the upstream actors. Downstream, as we are donating, is like Close the Gap and Circular IT for remanufacturing, refurbishing the laptops and giving them a new life to people in need. We buy TCO certified laptops, by the way, so there's already this focus on sustainability also in what we look for. So at this stage, we are looking into the different market solutions that there are for this end of use. And there are many different types of solutions, but our main reseller that we work with, Dustin, is also providing take-back schemes with guarantees for secure transportation and data wiping. So according to this Blanco certificate of that is providing these guarantees, and also they are providing possibly monetary rewards and reporting data on how many laptops have a new life there and there. But actually, what we are questioning now is like, where do these devices then end up? We don't have any guarantee if we will work together with Dustin about their social impact that we want to make, because we don't know. They are not reporting where the laptops go in the end. So a second thing is that we are thinking about the fact that the value chain of ICT is very global, but we also want to, in our goals, it's also, we want to create local employment and keeping resources in the European economy. So we are thinking, how can we change our tenders? So how can we foster collaboration between local partners in refurbishment and repair with these bigger suppliers and resellers that we are working with? So if we want to change the linear value chain, we are thinking how to create these different loops in between. At this stage, I'm very jealous about what OGP has shown. We are not buying back remanufactured laptops, so there's a whole there's a barrier somehow because people are concerned that remanufactured or refurbished is not given the same quality as new. So another barrier that we face in this Circular Shift project is that you have to change mindsets or perceptions of people regarding as new. So these are only a couple of things that I come up with when talking to my colleagues about this. But I want to give the floor to Didier, because he can tell you all about the way they work at Circular IT Group and Close the Gap.
Thank you indeed, Julie, and hello everybody. It's from my side very cool to see there are so many people interested in circular economy. I think we should also mark that. It's a challenge indeed, but let's also look at the positive side. There's a lot of good examples to look at. In our case, Circular IT Group is, well, obviously a company active throughout Europe. We have 4 sites, Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark, and the UK, where we process used IT assets. And I've been taking notes, and I think that if I can make the link between what was said, I think indeed, as Marieke said, we want to support companies and government also in using devices better and longer. I think that's the key. The tagline of the company is we make IT circular, we make it sustainable, but we want to make it easy as well. And I do agree with what was said. You need the assurance for the user. You need it for the first life of the device, but also for the second and even third life. And to tap in to what was said earlier, I'm also calling you from a refurbished laptop, by the way, and really happy with the quality of my own device. So I think we should also share that. But to make the link with the small movie, we also have an RMA, so the devices that come back after we have been refurbishing them of less than 3%. So yes, you can deliver good quality with second-hand IT devices. This being said, Circular IT Group has a scale of services that we offer. One of the services that we offer is take back of used IT devices. And if you look at the slide deck, what drives us is that we want to actually facilitate the blue circle that you see. And so obviously we have devices that are made. They're made in a very good way by the different OEMs. Then they're used, they're selected, they're bought or leased, they're used. And then at the end of the first life cycle, we try to support as much as we can through refurbishment, through remanufacturing, actually the reuse of devices. And what drives us is that actually 80% of the pollution of a device is caused in the production. And it was also shown in the film. We very often underestimate the ecological impact of making a device. But then again, once it's made, let's make sure that as a society, we get out of it what we can. By reusing the device or by reusing the components. So that is what we do. And if you look at the blue circle, if we look at the devices that we take in from companies, from governments, if you look at notebooks specifically, we see that on average, we recover more than 75% of devices. So more than 75% of devices actually get a second life with an extended warranty. So think of that. In the linear economy, we very often forget that, but the second life is a very plausible option for many devices. As a company, we work for other companies, obviously. So there is a monetary scheme. We do buy back devices. We do work in several ways to make sure that there's a financial compensation for the initial user, so they can reinvest. But we also have a charity track, and that's actually very close to my heart. I think that companies and governments, after the first life of devices, if they decide to go to new, they can have a very important societal, not only ecological, but also societal impact by actually giving the devices to societies that support educational projects. And in our case, we work together with 2 foundations, Close the Gap and Digital for Youth. There we go. Thanks for changing the slide. Close the Gap is a foundation that focuses on developing countries. So they also do projects in Europe, but they operate on a global scale. And I think 80% of what they actually reactivate goes to developing countries. And just to give you a view on the impact of Close the Gap, I've put down some numbers on the slides. They started about 25 years ago, have been working with our company ever since. And they actually have been able to recollect a lot of devices. You can look at the numbers. It's staggering. And they can do that thanks to the support of local communities like the City of Mechelen. So thank you for that. But also large corporates. And I think it's interesting to see that large corporates, but also local communities, they do that not only because it's easy to work with one player who collects and data wipes and processes all the IT devices, because that is what we do for Close the Gap, free of charge, by the way. But it's also because they tap into the impact story. Every device that we can put in the hands of youth that is living in challenging conditions, well, that's a huge impact. It's literally the story of helping a fisherman to fish. In today's digital society, that is what we do. So this social enterprise really is about receiving donations, and then they actually reactivate them, and that's what we do for them with pride. I also want to point out that we are not only working with Close the Gap, but also Digital for Youth. Digital for Youth is a local Belgian initiative focusing on Belgian youth. And those are only 2 initiatives, and I challenge you to also look in your own environment, in your own region, because there are plenty of other initiatives as well. And just as long as you can guarantee that it is a solid data sanitization or data wipe that is taking place, and that there is a good support for the second user, and think of the warranty that we mentioned, but also think of maybe some training, and then we can really give a very useful second life to IT devices. And to end, I think I want to end with a positive message. Thank you for listening to our story. Thank you for thinking of circularity in IT. And if you want more information, we will be around for the Q&A afterwards.
Thanks very much, Didier and Julie. I'm going to try to link the 2 presentations with a quick question before. I think Erica might have to leave, but if you do have to go before answering, it's okay. We heard about the social impact there and what happens afterwards. So there was a question from Ilse in the chat. She was asking, well, what happens with the remanufactured laptops after their use? We heard a little bit from what happens in Mechelen, but if you have the time, Erica, would you be able to explain your perspective on that from the OGP?
We currently don't have a mechanism at the moment. We still are in the first phase of our public sector bodies currently dispose of them themselves. Remanufactured, we've only got the contract and word in place the last 2 years, so none of those devices have actually come to end of life yet. But in saying that, our new devices framework is due to expire, and it is something that we are looking at. And it'll probably it's the next phase to this. I suppose phase 1 of this was bringing remanufactured into it, and now our phase 2 is going to be looking at now how do we dispose of devices. And I suppose we are looking at sending, or is there a way that we can send our own devices off to be remanufactured? So I suppose that would be the thing. And then what do we do with the disposal of the remanufactured ones we've purchased in? Is their life in the old girl yet, so to speak?
Thanks a lot. And Didier, you'd like to come in?
Yes, so obviously end of second life is also important. We actually have cases where we were able to recover devices after the second life and give them a third life as well. Very briefly, we redeploy in countries where you have excellent solutions for end of life IT devices, mainly in Europe. So there we try to encourage that, but we also take back devices ourselves if that is requested. In developing countries, we have been setting up a scheme where we work with partners who actually take back devices. They can only hand out devices if they also take back devices. And then we try to focus on recycling and reusing as much as we can locally. But that is indeed a key element to also think about.
Indeed, thanks. And Steve, you'd like to add something there?
Thanks, Dominic. Yes, Didier, I think we see it as end of use as opposed to end of life. So which is a fair statement, I think. And what we are trying to do with influence within working groups like this is to consider, let's say, a circular IT within government. So the importance of that is that the government serve a public who have invested heavily with their taxes to get the services that they need. So if you think about a pyramid, and the OGP and central government would be at the top of the pyramid, there are people within the IT use group that could be lower down. It could be the care community, it could be the schools, who are really sort of restricted on budget. So taking assets out of central gov can go back into a process, a circular process that then can be refurbished or remanufactured and flow down into other parts of the public sector, which is an absolute central part of the circular economy in terms of value retention. But the first part is to get the vehicle moving, get the system moving, and we're 2 years into it. So I think there's plenty of work to be done within the OGP to kind of get that economy moving. This is the first phase. but it will be a long game because it's about behavior patterns and making sure that that asset doesn't enter into a waste stream. It's just seen as next generation resources, if you think of it like that. And we're just delighted to be part of this sort of working group to explore how that happens in practice, because we understand it's a challenge.
It is.
Yeah, thank you. Really touching on the importance of data and knowing exactly what sort of assets you have within your government, within the public service, and seeing how different departments across the country can interact with each other. I know that there's some interesting good practices on this sort of sharing across departments in the case of furniture in the Netherlands that we're aware of. But Marika, you'd like to come in and perhaps add something on to what Steve just said.
Yeah, and I guess I have a question for Steve and DJ. So Julie already explained that in the City of Mechelen, the standard use time of laptops has been extended to 5 years. We see in many public authorities, but also other corporates, that the time of use is less than that. But what is, in your experience, currently the lifetime of a laptop that's realistically feasible, first life and second or third? What could be, what should we be aiming for altogether?
I think if I can start, really, on our experience, it really depends on the context and also on the user and user experience. If we prepare a device for second life that goes to a local school here in Mechelen, that's different than when it's sent to Lubumbashi, for instance, because you have different humidity, different temperatures, different power supply. But we have been tracking devices for up to 8 years. And then I mean tracking for 8 years in the second life. I think to be reasonable, we do follow devices on a large scale, and I think you can expect a second life of 4 years if they come in after 3 to 5 years.
I agree with that.
I'm not talking about heavy graphic use. I'm talking about a student writing a thesis, doing some research, using PowerPoint, Excel, those kind of things. Basic use.
So from our end, Marika, I think the overarching strategy of the business defines what the hardware life should be. So if the hardware can do the job required by the software requirements and the operation of that business, then the job of industry, our side of the table, is to make sure that the use of the device is not compromised by the user. So if you think about first life could be 4 years. And sometimes that function is delivered by the finance team. So the IT division don't necessarily define their end user strategy. They're given €1,000. Finance will write it off over 4 years, and they come back and here's another €1,000, and that's kind of the system which needs to be shaken about a little bit, because it's a lazy system, but it's one that exists. So assume it's a 4-year first life, and then assume it's a 4-year second life, and then assume it's a further 4 years in a second life or a third life. And ultimately, with one device, there's no reason why you can't get 12 years out of it. But what we saw with Windows 11 coming through, the security elements contained within that, is that then moved where people needed to go as a minimum threshold for their device strategy, and so there was always sort of taken away from is the device good enough, or to it needs to be this minimum specification to meet the demands of security. So that's how we saw the change.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. First Anthony, and then Didier second.
Just to follow on there from what Steve was saying, like a lot of the decisions are made by other factors. Like Steve said, it's written down over 3 or 4 years. Once it's written down by the financial people, that's it, get rid of it. Warranty is another one. We have a customer there. Warranty is 3 years. Once warranty comes to end of life, they change the machine because they don't get the support, so those factors happen. I think the other thing as well is software and operating systems and things like that can decide it. In a lot of cases, Steve mentioned Windows 11. There was a huge change out of equipment with that. But the good news, I suppose, on that side of it as well is there are advancements like Chrome Flex from Google, like Linux, where equipment may be no longer fit to be used on Windows 11, but could have an extension of 4 or 5 years thanks to the likes of Flex and Linux. Now, again, some of those applications may be in education, not for profit. They may not be suitable in the public sector, but it does absolutely give the opportunity to extend the life further on as well.
Yeah, agree. And I think to add to that, and I want to refer back to what Steve was saying, very often you see it's a financial decision. And what we do is we take back a lot of devices. If you look at the numbers for the group in total, we have the capacity of processing 1 million devices. In our facility where I'm calling you from in Belgium, it's about 300,000 devices. So we get a lot of input on first use. And we try to develop more and more this sort of rhythm where we also give feedback to the first users, to the companies, to the governments on the impact of their use on the devices. Because very often we see that a company takes a decision to have one type of device for everybody. And I get that from an IT management perspective. But it's not always the right tool for the job. And we try to encourage to differentiate in there. And not everybody needs the same HP Elite book. Sometimes you can even go to a desktop. Sometimes you can even go to a smaller device. Sometimes it simply needs to be a heavier machine as well. So we try to advise people based on the feedback after processing the devices. Based on that feedback, we try to actually incentivize our customers to think about what they acquire. That's one. And two, we also try to encourage use of refurbished devices, and warranty is a key element. So that's why we also offer up to 3 years of warranty on refurbished devices, because it is understandable that an IT manager wants to sleep well at night. So we try to facilitate that as well. And I think it all comes down to understanding the user, but also giving them the content and the insights that they need.
Perfect. Thank you all. I want to go back to the chat. There was some questions there from Virginie from CircuLife. I'll list the questions and then see who wants to come in. The first is, where do the devices actually come from in the first place before they're remanufactured? In general, do the companies that offer these devices get money back? And third, could an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, offer a long life cycle themselves, first life, and support repair throughout a longer life cycle? So I think it's a question for both cases, really.
If I can answer to that, Dominic, if that's okay. So there is a very big aftermarket. Whilst it might not be so obvious to people who are only buying new, there is a very mature aftermarket. Our remanufactured devices, we have a global procurement. So because of the volume that we do 20,000 devices a month over in Circular Computing. We need to have, and we do a very small amount of SKU. So we have like 3 or 4 devices in our range from HP, Dell, Lenovo. So we need to have consistency of supply. So we have North America, APAC, Middle East, and Northern Europe would be our feeding grounds for procurement, if that makes sense. And we align ourselves to the large, they're called ITADs, ITAD asset disposal companies, who provide a rollout function for government and large organizations. Obviously, yes, GreenIT and Circular IT are within that. We are not an ITAD. We consume from ITAD, but also we align ourselves to large leasing companies who have a behavior of the asset that is quite finite. So it might be a 3 or 4 year lease. And so we know on the 36th month or the 48th month that product is coming out, and it's coming out in volume. So that's where we procure our product from. So we don't buy from consumers. We don't offer a kind of a buyback from the consumer market, because we need kind of an absolute behavior pattern to consume our procurement. Is there value in that? Yes, there is. And there is a value in the aftermarket. So waste has a value. It just needs to be determined by the supply chain kind of flowing through, and what happens to that value. So there are some organizations that we trade with that want a social program, and we use the value created in what they deem as their waste or the second life value to help them create a social value. They don't value the in the public sector especially, that they don't cut invoices. So having money back is a bit of a problem, because they don't have a mechanism for receiving money back. So they want value in a different way. and we create that value for them. And that could be we will allocate value based on the second-hand value, creates a euro value, and then we'll allow that euro value to be allocated to product. We can then feed that product into, like Didier was saying, to some social value projects that really create a closing of the digital divide, which is really important in the world today. Does the OEM offer long life cycle themselves? The challenge that they have is that they have a system that is so tight, a just-in-time system that is so tight, meaning from the mine to market, there are trillions of dollars taxable globally in a supply chain that is global, and that needs to function metronomically. It needs to kind of tick along. And you can see when COVID happened, that the metronome stopped, or the rhythm changed to the point where there was no products in the supply chain. People were working from home, people weren't mining, and it created havoc that we're seeing the second wave of now actually. So it's not in their interest to move from linearity to circularity quickly, nor is it in the interest of the global economy to do that either. They need to go at it really kind of slowly and try and accommodate their existing business model to the way that organizations like the OGP and people on this call want to work in a more kind of sustainable fashion. But the bridge of change is happening. They're adopting circular themes within their existing production lines, and we are seeing warranties being pushed out to kind of 5 years and 6 years now. So they are trying to be more compliant with users, but ultimately they have to protect what they've already got whilst trying to adopt to the new way of the world, is what I would say. It's a challenge for them, but we are not an enemy to the OEMs. We have a very good relationship with all of our OEMs, and I think it's important to recognize that without their fantastic first life product, we don't exist as a business. We need their innovation to exist second time around. So we work closely with them.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Some really interesting points there. I'll let Didier come in and then say, well, maybe I have time for my own question as well, and then we'll lean in towards the conclusions and try to wrap everything together. But Didier, please go ahead.
So I want to tap into what Steve was saying, and I like the image that you give with the metronome, and indeed we're looking at the second interruption, and I think there's room for improvement in the way that we interact together with OEMs, but also large companies and governments. If we look at lifetime extension, one of the things that the OEMs struggle with is that they do not have enough spare parts to repair the devices that are still out there. But being an ITED company ourselves, we get in a lot of devices with a lot of spare parts we can reuse. And creating a market around that could really facilitate circular economy, to really facilitate that smooth transition that you mentioned there. We're lacking a bit of a platform, I think, today that is sizable to facilitate that. But looking at devices, not at a device level, but at a component level, could maybe also have a good impact there. And I think that today's scarcity might trigger that or might facilitate that as well. So just to show that every crisis also has its opportunity potentially.
Sorry, Didier, just to hop on the back of that, there's one important point. The way that government, in terms of this value chain collaboration piece, works, I think that the governments of the world know that it's difficult for everybody. So here in the UK, there is something called the government buying standards that's coming, and they're going to mandate public sector to have 25% of their hardware estate to be, we'll call it an alternative to new. So that could be remanufactured or refurbished. That then allows for collaboration with the supply chain. So the supply chain being the supply of new product from OEM to market. The plumbing of that is really complicated. So to try and fit an alternative to new and new into the same supply chain requires a little bit of thinking through, but what that ambition does is, I mean, you see it in France as well. I know, Erica, you mentioned about what's happening with Ireland. is it allows the OEMs to take the commercial risk to move from linearity to circularity in a controlled fashion, as opposed to going, well, we have to go this way. You know, you mentioned at the beginning of the call, you know, you went to market, you did that audience work, and 25% said that they would be happy to move, and therefore the commercial risk in doing the framework on your side was pretty much covered by the ambition of the users, that allowed everybody from our side, on industry side, to put their weight behind it, and knowing that, okay, there wasn't going to be a queue around the block waiting to buy the product. We had to get into the market and educate the customers about what was available. But ultimately, you gave, as a government organisation, the door was open for that transition for people to move. And so what we believe is from a provision is that there isn't one customer I work with that is 100% circular computing. We coexist with new in the same way that diesel cars and EVs that coexist on the roads, and renewables and fossil fuels coexist in the world today. So there's a place in a big organisation to have new and an alternative to new solution based on the requirements of the individual user. So we see persona and performance-based refresh becoming kind of the talking point. But thank you. Yeah, so I think that's important.
Yeah, thanks both of you very much. Now, I had a question I was going to ask, but I've been usurped by an even better question, I think, in the chat from Belen, who wants to know about the role of extended producer responsibility and what effect that has in the value chains, whether they finance something. I think this is a really interesting question. I'm going to see who wants to come in, because we've been talking a lot about the demand lever here and procurement, but EPR, on the other hand, is very much operating to boost the supply of these materials through better design, etc. So does anybody want to raise their hand quickly, give a short answer, a couple of short answers, and then I'll conclude and share a few slides. Let's see. It's a daunting question, perhaps. Didier, you might have something. Marika, I see a smile.
I just don't know enough about the extended producer responsibility system. And I'm just wondering if there's somebody in the audience that's an expert on this field who might be better placed to reply. But my understanding at the moment, which may not be entirely correct. So if anyone has better information, I see a hand.
Yeah, let's
from
see how
Fergal.
we can allow.
Can you allow a
Yes,
participant to speak?
Fergal, you can unmute and put on your camera if you like.
Now, can you all hear me?
Yes. Welcome.
How you doing? Yes, so I work with ERP. We're a pan-European compliance scheme. So we're working with Anthony, trying to develop stuff with Anthony O'Day and GreenIT as well around this project. But in Ireland, we've concentrated. Sorry, I ran up the stairs to get back on my laptop. In Ireland, we concentrate very much on the household B2C.
Yeah, it's the same
products
in Belgium.
Yeah. So we don't, as one of the callers, presenters earlier mentioned, that the ITAD guys do get a lot of the IT equipment. But we're trying to identify better channels for that to bring it back to people like Anthony, excuse me, so they can then help provide Erlich and the OGP with the product that they need. So yeah, I guess to sum up, or to Anthony might be able to help as well, but like we'd collect most of our equipment, which is all equipment, including like white goods and cold goods and TVs, that type of thing, from CA sites and retailers. And we do find that there's not a huge amount of IT equipment comes back in terms of laptops through that channel. And when it does come back, it's quite really not probably suitable for use. So what we're trying to do is set up a different type of collection network where we'll have different receptacles for IT that's secure in, say, civic community sites or retailers, that can be then, it'll be stored securely and definitely out of weather and all that type of thing, and people won't be able to poke through it. It'll be stored safely and secured, and then we can transfer it to people like Anthony and GreenIT for further reuse. But it's an ongoing project at the moment.
Thanks, Fergal, for stepping in so generously with your insight. I'll give Anthony a chance to share something, but maybe 60 seconds, and then we'll wrap things up. Thank you.
I'll do 30 seconds if you want. Look, yeah, as Fergus said, I suppose one of the issues with the B2C market is I suppose customers are wary about sending back data-bearing devices through a civic community site scenario. So we're trying to do a bit of work on that to see what are better alternatives to try and encourage people to send back, whether it's smartphones, laptops, etc. And also then the condition of those coming back, because in a lot of civic community site scenarios, it's open to weather, etc., etc. So, you know, the devices, when they do come back, they have been roughed up a bit or they've been exposed to weather. So that's something that's key to it. A lot of these are dual use devices as well. So they're being used by SMEs and by companies as well. And a lot of that needs to be encouraged as well, because a lot of SMEs are not attractive to large ITAD companies. They've only got small volumes. So there needs to be a facility there for, you know, your accountants and solicitors that only maybe use 3, 5, 10 devices in a year to be able to get that equipment back into the cycle as well.
Thanks very much, and really good question there, Belen. I hope that it was answered. And again, really nice to hear the other side of this problem of supply and demand. Now, I just want to wrap things up because we've got 5 minutes here. So we've learned a lot today, but really on a top line, what I would say is this webinar was born out of a report that the Circular Shift project has worked on, and it covers a range of case studies about value chain collaboration in ICT, which we heard a lot about today, but also mobile phones, which we touched upon briefly, and textiles. The report itself will be made public in some form in a few weeks after our second webinar, which is going to focus on textiles. But what I want to raise from that already is that what we've heard today really touches upon the same lessons that we've learned from the other case studies that we've looked at. So there's the same sort of barriers, institutional, cultural, also market-related barriers that are facing public buyers across Northwest Europe when it comes to value chain collaboration. And a lot of the solutions are indeed the same. You need to invest in capabilities within the organizations. You have to implement a system of trust between the market. And you need strong organizational structures that allow you to talk to all the people and have indeed an oversight about the equipment that you have, the needs that you have, and be able to form strong narrative structures. Something that's really struck me today is we've talked about security, we've talked about the economics, we've talked about the environmental footprint, and really the needs are going to be the way that you talk within the organization can sometimes also depend on what message is going to reciprocate. I'm going to share a final slide to help us promote a little bit what we're doing next within Circular Shift. So I hope that's all coming up now. I invite you to take out your circular mobile phones, your fair phones, your recycled, remanufactured phones, and scan the QR codes on the screen, because the thing on the left is on the 13th of May, we have a webinar concerning textiles procurement. We're going to be listening to a case from Groningen in the Netherlands and one of their value chain partners. We're also having a case from Belgium where we have a textiles upcycler. It's a really interesting initiative, working with some very big clients like Decathlon. And we'll also have a good practice from France, where Nantes Métropole will have one of their cases represented as well. So please be sure to register for that. The other thing I'd like to promote is for anybody who speaks Flemish or Dutch and is interested in this event, there's a Buyers Meet Suppliers event happening on the 9th of July in Roosendaal. It's in the south of the Netherlands, very accessible from Antwerp, Mechelen, and anywhere in Holland. It is Dutch language only, but you can find more information on that on the QR code. And a final QR code, which I'm going to send hurrah for these digital systems, is if you'd like to stay in touch with the Circular Shift project, to listen more to anything that we develop in the next few years, you can stay in touch with our mailing list. We're going to be sending out invitations to the next webinar. You can find that on our social media. We're going to be sharing the report. And so please stay in touch with us. We'd love to stay in touch with you as we collaborate more across the value chain. It's been great to see people from so many countries. And I'll stop sharing the screen now just to give a final look at the, I don't know how to stop sharing the screen, but just want to say a final thanks to all of our speakers on the screen. You've been great. Marika, Julie, Didier, Anthony, Erica, Steve, and Fergal for coming in, as well as Anita. I hope I didn't miss anyone. Thanks so much. We'll be sharing the recording after this. And yeah, please stay in touch. Thanks for your participation, and see you all next time.
Thank you, and thanks for the great moderation as well.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.